Blau und weiß sein Leben lang. Hallo Leute, willkommen zum einzigen Schalke Podcast auf English. That's right, folks. Officially the world's only English Schalke podcast. This is episode 139 of SchalkeMerica. I'm your host Richard Carmen. Joining me as always on a not so victory Monday, Jack Mangan. Jack, how we doing, man?
A not victory Monday across a number of different sports, or at least teams. Not a good sports weekend for your boy. Yeah, pretty rough run for me. Not only did Schalke lose a result in stoppage time, but we had my Chicago Red Stars losing in a final once again, and then some additional fallout today in the form of some long form journalism. Not in the scope of this podcast, but just adding to that, and then of course the Bears doing Bears things as well, losing last minute to the Baltimore Ravens. So yeah, tough sports weekend for me. How are you, sir?
Obviously the Schalke game was difficult, but going into the game, I was good because the SchalkeMerica derby went to me this weekend with my Spirit winning their first title. So yeah, it was the rest of the weekend was fine. Redskins are somehow what are they calling it? The Washington football team. They won. It was
Washington
okay. Washington football team. The WTFs. I mean, WFTs. Yeah, but otherwise, all right, good, man. It's good. But we got a lot to talk about, in particular from this game. Let's just get into it. I mean, anything you want to talk before we get into this game? Obviously, we're gonna have a big talking point, but.
Yeah, no, not really. I had a gig with my band, so I only watched like a portion of this. I'm gonna have to rely on you for the most part for what your takes were generally, but of course did see the end, which is as you said, gonna be the main talking point in this one. But yeah, if you want to just jump into the lineups real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get into there. So looking at the lineups in this one, for the home team, which would be Werder Bremen, Yuri Pavlenka would be in goal. They went with a back three of Gross, Toprak, and Jung. One with a holding midfielder of Groove, and then midfield four, I guess, really, of Agu, Schmidt, and Baum, and Bittencourt, who was dangerous all game long. And then up top, they had Dux and Fulkrug. Obviously, Fulkrug is someone who's been a pain in our ass for as long as he's been in our lives. Was he obviously he and Bittencourt, I think, going into this game would have been the big focal points for me. What were your thoughts on this Werder Bremen team? Obviously, Pavlenka is a decent goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you as those two kind of being the main danger men. Certainly a larger percentage of their starting XI sort of intact from last year as opposed to ours. So yeah, a little bit more carryover and continuity. Some names that you would obviously recognize there. And from what I understand, Pavlenka didn't have maybe the best day in goal overall. I mean, not a whole lot of action on either side in terms of like clear-cut chances. But yeah, generally speaking, Pavlenka, a pretty solid goalkeeper. He's given us trouble in the past for sure.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And looking at our lineup, obviously Frazel still in goal. Back three of Tiao, Kaminsky, and Itakura. Paulsen is back as a holding midfielder with Latza and Drexler in the middle, and then Aidan on the right, Owian on the left, up top Bulter and Terodde. Again, seeing Latza and Paulsen, I was curious to see how that was going to work out. We saw how, in my opinion, I thought Latza had a very struggle of a game. Thoughts on the lineup for us going into that?
I mean, yeah, that was a talking point for us on the last pod, right? Was the comments that Grammozis had made regarding Donny Latza's fitness, but also his propensity to, I think, be included in the starting lineup. I mean, it definitely sounded like, he was kind of committed to Donny Latza being, the captain and being one of the first names on the team sheet when available. And we saw that again. And it kind of, you have to say it probably comes at the expense of a guy like Zalazar, which I don't know if that's the guy that you want to be dropping for the most part. So, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Donny Latza's performance was, but I think so far, limited sample size post-injury, nothing to be excited about at all, and certainly nothing, I think, warranting, mandatory inclusion in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and before I really get into Latza, I'm going to give a plug to a friend of the show, friend of the podcast, Marie Schulte-Bochum. She got an interview with Rodrigo Zalazar after the game or just before the game on her Marie's Bundesliga minutes. So definitely give that a look. We retweeted that, so give her a follow for sure. But back to Donny Latza. Yeah, I thought he had an incredibly poor game in this one. I was screaming for him to come off at halftime. He obviously had the yellow card going into halftime. was not playing well, all out of position in my opinion. I thought he was by far the worst player on the team. Not that he was atrocious or anything, but he needed to come off. I think we were lacking offensive. I mean, we've constantly lacking offensive output, right? But he wasn't helping things. I think having Zalazar or maybe a Cherlinov out there would have been much better in my opinion than having Latza and Paulson, who kind of really cancel each other out. And Paulson, I thought, was having decent a game. I think he had a goal line clearance in the first half, I think. So yeah, Latza was really, what's the English phrase, 6s and 7s, and he was probably a 4 for me. But yeah, he did end up coming out of the game. The game was very, very stagnant. When neither team was really being dominant at times. Schalke had a little bit of possession early on, and then Werder Bremen started taking control of the game in terms of possession. First half, we outshot them, but in second half, they really put the pedal to the metal against us. And it looked like we were bound for a 0-0 draw. I remember during the chat, people were saying, this is going to be a draw. It's going to be a draw. And then out of the blue, I think, Simon Terodde, he was pretty active all game long, I thought. It wasn't one of his best games by any stretch, but he was popping up all throughout the game. And then finally, the 82nd minute, after Rodrigo Zalazar was inserted into lineup for Danny Latza, had a shot from distance. We know that he loves doing that. Pavlenka could not handle it. And what does Terodde do? He poaches, beautiful diving header to get the goal. Wonderful for him to finally get the record breaker, 154, the lone goal scorer or leader of this Zweite Liga. And at that point, it seemed like we were bound to win, right, Jack? 1-0 late in the game. Thoughts on Terodde finally breaking his duck and getting the record?
Yeah, well, he had been on a tear to start the season, and then once he reached sort of that, that 1 goal shy threshold of the record, suddenly he was sitting on that for a number of games and just couldn't seem to break through. But we always knew that, obviously, as long as he was fit, it was only a matter of time. It's just about providing, the proper service for him, and it wasn't really even the proper service on this play. But Zalazar just kind of has one from significantly outside the box and really gets a hold of it. I mean, on target, I was forced to save from Pavlenka at least, and it was hit with enough pace that Pavlenka, wasn't able to hold on to it and wasn't able to really direct it where he probably would have liked to either. And luckily Terodde, and I believe maybe somebody else as well, but Terodde followed the shot in, and was the first to get there. And as you said, diving header, and makes no mistake about it, and relatively stylish way to get the record. Maybe would have liked it if it was, a little bit something that he created a little bit more, or, something like that, as opposed to just kind of mopping up. But, I think he'll take it any way he can. And, not only a big goal for him personally, but a big goal in the context of the match at that point.
Wasn't the record tying goal just a random deflection off of him that he really didn't take a shot, just hit it and went in? I think it's something really fluky. So
I don't even remember, because it's been so many games now since he actually scored. Yeah, I don't remember when the last one came. Yeah.
But this is a little bit more Terodde-like as opposed to that goal. But I think the big thing for me in that goal was that this is what Zalazar brings, right? He does have that potential of that offensive output, and he loves taking those shots from distance. A lot of times it does go high, but when he gets it on target, it forces the goalkeeper to make a save. And if you got guys like Bulter and Terodde who can read those, you have a chance at the rebound opportunity, and that's what Terodde did. And so,
yeah, we've made fun of it at times this season, sort of Zalazar go burr type meme, you know what I mean? Like that's the tactic, but that isn't to say there isn't some use to that in general, especially when things get bogged down or, otherwise sort of intractable situations in the midfield where we're really having difficulty building. There's some usefulness to a guy that can kind of do those things and just kind of throw something and make something happen. So and once again, it brings up the question of, should Danny Latza be a nailed on starter, so that you're having to decide between the likes of Drexler and Zalazar every game and rotate them in and out. I mean, personally, in my opinion, once again, I don't have an anti Danny Latza agenda. It's just I think on the balance of what we've seen this season, I think Zalazar has absolutely earned a spot. So unless it's just a rotation situation, which if that's the case, fine, but it comes on the back of an international break. I would doubt that's the case. So something to watch going forward. And if the results continue to suffer, and Danny Latza's performances don't improve, I think it's going to help Grammozis' case, as a manager who's, severely under pressure anyway. I mean, do you disagree that Zalazar at this point in the season has been one of our better players overall? I mean, certainly top 5, you'd say, arguably top 3. I mean, like,
yeah. No, I agree. I think he's been he's gotten more and more consistent as the season's gone on. It's not been to where we think he should be as a central attacking midfielder, but he's been playing better and better and causing a lot of things. And I think as soon as he came on, he was an instant impact for us, constantly driving against the Werder Bremen defense. And I think
after the first 4 games of the season, he's been really, really solid since that point, at least at a minimum. So,
and like you said, he probably deserves to be in a starting 11. And I think another guy who deserves to be in a starting 11 is Drexler. Drexler's been playing his ass off. I think he may have picked up an injury at the end of the game, so that may spare Grammozis the blushes if he can get Zalazar and Latza in there. Not that we have anything against Latza, but I think Paulson's probably deserved his spot as well. He's been pretty admirable when he's not blowing his lid for something stupid, right? But Zalazar and I think Drexler deserve to be in that starting 11. I think we're a better team when they're both in there. But we'll see if Grammozis learns from his ways. We'll see if any injuries coming out of the end of that game affect his starting 11 going into the match against Sandhausen coming up here this Saturday at 7:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Central. We thought we were heading to victory in this one. We knew some time was going to come out at the end of the game, right? For stoppage time, because there were several injuries, substitutions, and whatnot. But in literally the last minute of stoppage time, there was a play where it resulted in our box. It might have been a pass over the top or something. And Matriciani was defending the I forget who the Werder Bremen attacker was. You see the Bremen player go down, and you're watching. I was watching live, and I'm like, that's not a penalty. There's no chance. I mean, like, it's possible, but then you watch the replay, and you're like, there's no chance. There's no penalty here. Come on. They slapped hands. Go to VAR, as you imagine they would, right? And then I think everyone and their mother was thinking, okay, this is no penalty, game over. They point to the spot. This is the big controversy of the game. What are your thoughts on what happened?
Yeah, so apologies first of all if I butcher the pronunciation of the last name. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go with Asale, I believe.
Yes,
Roger
yes,
Asale.
I think so.
So I believe it was. I want to say it was Gruev, who played that initial ball in, kind of like a desperation, kind of like long ball, not quite from midfield, but sort of over from the sideline near midfield. And I think one of our players, got ahead to it, but kind of knocked it over to the right, and unfortunately, Asale was kind of running in off that shoulder. Matriciani, turns around to kind of track the ball, and then has a Bremen player like right in front of him suddenly. It does appear as though there's some contact from Matriciani's right foot onto Asale's right foot. It appears to be exceedingly minimal, and what follows to me, and obviously this is going to be my biased Schalke perspective, appears to be a pretty clear dive. I don't think that contact warrants that kind of fall from him, and it seems as though he's perfectly fine until he realizes that he's not close enough to the ball, and that Frazel is gonna pick that up, and then he suddenly goes down quite dramatically. I mean, when that initially happened, I wasn't sure if they had called a handball on Matriciani or what was going on, because it didn't appear to be like an actual foul from a tackle, right? So I wasn't even sure what was being discussed. But pretty shocking that he's clearly in communication with the video official, and then gets sent over to the monitor to check it out himself. And shockingly calls the penalty. I mean, Tobias Stieler is a very experienced official, a pretty well known name in my opinion. In German soccer, and I don't know what to say. I mean, listen, like I said, there was some minor contact. If you want to say that that's enough for a penalty, I mean, go for it. I don't think it is. And I think, it's not that you can call it based on the game situation, but I don't think you call that in general. I especially don't think you call that in the 90th minute. The fact that he only had to look at the video in slow motion to determine that, in my opinion, should have also allowed him to see in slow motion how clear of a dive that was. Yeah. And these things are subjective, but I was shocked by that personally.
Yeah, and I think he did not call a penalty on the field, and when he went to VAR, it should be conclusive, and I doubt it very much he found any conclusion from that. You mentioned that maybe he touched his foot. It's funny because actually Grammozis mentioned this as well. So Grammozis quoted after the game and says he told me that the player was hit in the foot and that was a clear penalty. Grammozis went on to say maybe he'll have to take the referee certificate again because that's not a normal. And he has a FIFA badge on for fuck's sake. But yeah, I looked at the replay many times, and after they call that penalty, the only thing I 100% saw was the slap of the hand, Matriciani on Asale, and he went down. You see his foot go down, and it's not conclusive whether he hits him or not. It looks like he has his foot down just before Asale gets there, and then like you said, he realizes the ball is way too far ahead of him and dives. Rovan Schroeder, you love the guy. You love him more and more, and especially after this comment he made in the game. After the game, he says, because that was one of the most blatant mistakes I've ever seen. I know the DFB came out and said that one, VAR should never have intervened in that play, but two, there's nothing. It said something about like it wasn't conclusive or something, and
And that was interesting to me is that like DFB actually did come out in dialogue with Schalke. Schalke published this on the website saying that this was a conversation I had with them that confirmed that, number one, it was the correct decision to not give a penalty. Number two, it wasn't a clear and obvious error. So VAR shouldn't have even radioed down to Tobias Stieler to like question him on it or get him to go look at it.
Yeah.
And then third, based on the footage that was available from the TV broadcast, at least, I don't know if there was additional footage that, Stieler was able to see at the VAR, but at least based on the footage that we saw, there wasn't anything that was conclusive that should have allowed him to overturn it in the first place. So the DFB basically came out and said on 3 different like strikes, essentially, he was wrong and incorrect in every single one of them. And so, I think we can feel justified in feeling pretty aggrieved when the DFB agrees that it was, mishandled through multiple stages of that process and was ultimately the wrong decision. So, of course, Werder Bremen on their website call it a deserved draw, and like a correct foul decision, of course, because that's what they're going to do. But pretty absurd. I mean, once again, it wasn't as if like he called the penalty and then went and looked at it and confirmed it. He didn't call the penalty initially, and I think everyone besides the Werder Bremen players thought that was the right decision. It's tough, and that's not going to hopefully be the result that like costs us getting promoted or something like that. But 2 points are 2 points, and that's a tough way to lose it. Just seconds from the end of the match.
Yeah, and I guess another team who just dropped from the Bundesliga, you imagine to be in the hunt as well. So it's a big 2 points loss, and even Dirk says agrees with us. And what's even more damning with all of that, you add all that on top of that, is you look some of the replays, and it looked like it was a handball against Werder Bremen. Dirk even mentions that here, first a handball and then a dive. It's unfortunate. Schalke, many wondered if Schalke were going to like protest this and do some kind of legal thing with this. They came out and said they're not going to do it. It's not even worth it. They just realized that this has to be a talking point. It needs to be discussed because this needs to change. You can't have this. And the rules clearly state, what you can and cannot do. And obviously that rules weren't followed in this one. Why so many people like Schroeder and Grammozis were pissed off about it. You're welcome, William. See, William talked about the handball as well. But it's infuriating because literally in the 9th minute of stoppage time, they finally, they call a penalty and Füllkrug steps up. It's more than likely he's going to score. He did score. And I said he celebrated like an asshole, which he pretty much did. But, hey, you just tied the game. So no fault of Füllkrug. I think I'm more pissed off at Stieler. But man, that's a horrible way to.
You and I have talked about some decisions over the course of the life of this podcast, right? That have not gone our way. Like, I'm not even that angry about this one, just because I'm still so shocked about, like, every time I watch it, I'm just like, really? You're gonna make that call? I mean, it's got to be the worst thing I think that you and I have ever witnessed together. I think.
Yes.
Since starting this, it's absurd. Yeah. Credit to Schroeder and Grammozis for not pulling any punches in the media and being like overly diplomatic about it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't see it, or this and that. And then they came out and said, this is an absurd decision. And I think Grammozis was saying stuff like, I've been around football for a while. Like, it's not my first time around the block, and that may be the worst thing I've ever seen in my career. So
earned some points with me there.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the hot seat, so he's going to say what he has to say to help himself out. But I believe that he's being fairly truthful with that appraisal. So
yeah, and like I said, Rovan Schroeder, he was heated when they interviewed him with Sky after the game too. So he keeps winning more and more points with me. So What are you gonna do? Dirk says, "I'm disappointed with Schalke though because by not filing a protest, they give the DFB no reason to change their VAR rules." Yeah,
Dirk,
and
I don't know if we can afford the legal fees at this point. I mean,
this
come
is
on.
true. This is true. He goes up there with Timo Werner died for a couple years ago. I think this is worse than that. This is worse than that.
I mean,
you think?
I think the call. I think this call might be. I think the action from the player. I think the Timo Werner dive.
Yeah, far
is
worse.
Still the most.
Yes.
And his post match commentary on it. Like even when his own coach was like, "Yeah, that wasn't a foul," and Timo Werner's like, "Yeah, he touched me." Like that may be the most egregious dive I've ever seen. Was the Timo Werner one?
Yeah. It's one of them for sure. Yeah, there's some pretty bad ones. You look at some Brazilian Neymars. You can name a few. But
I still get thinking about that every time I think about it. That was like 30 seconds into the match, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, ruined the game. But this ruined the game as well. 1-1 ruins Terodde's record-breaking night. Would have been a celebration. Would have been celebration mode. But yeah, it's a hard result because we would have pushed up to 5th place. This sucks even more for Grammozis because his hot seat is still very much hot. They could have gone up to 5th place and been moving up. But now with the draw, they're still in 7th place. They're still behind Nuremberg, still behind Hamburg, and obviously the big boys in the top 4. Surprise result of the weekend is St. Pauli lost, and they lost to Darmstadt 4-0, which is a crazy result, which makes it wide open. Now they're not unbeatable. We didn't think they were.
It's Bergstaller solidarity right there, man. That's what it is.
That's right. That's
looking out for us.
But
I thought he would have been on revenge mode after they released like photos of Terodde in the ugly sweaters.
Did they? I missed that.
I saw that on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, he's being replaced. Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. You look at the table. I mean, we're in 7th place now, but I think 3 points from the top. So that top 7 is condensed to within basically 1 match result worth of a points haul. So, this is what we said preseason. Gonna be a good one in the 2nd division. And certainly starting to shape up that way with a lot of teams in the mix here. I mean, you really have no idea how this could end up based on how things are going at the moment.
We talked about how difficult this league is. We said it all last year. Like, don't wish to go to Zweite Liga because it's difficult, and it proves it with 7-8 teams within 3 points. So here's a question, right? We get into the Winterpause, same position in the table, still same amount of point difference between us and the top. Do you get rid of Grammozis?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
once again, it depends on the financial situation. I guess there is a universe in which Schalke feel that they can be financially solvent with a 2nd consecutive season in the 2nd division, and they're not as concerned about it, and maybe they go for continuity because they believe that Grammozis has the minerals or whatever. But I don't see how if we're not at least I think top in 3. Like fourth place, like a point or 2 off the top 3. Yeah. I think that's the only way he survives. Anything below that, and I think he's gone. If not by Christmas, maybe even before that. I mean, once again, we talked about before the international break, like the fixture list coming out of the break is not any kinder than it was going into it. No. And we said this could get ugly real fast for him. And luckily, he has he's sort of bolstered by that result coming by way of a very controversial decision that fans will not blame him for. Obviously, right. But they need to respond now and pick up a result in the next one.
If you look at the next 4 games before the Winterpause, right? The next one's a must-win against Sandhausen, bottom of the table with Sandhausen. But then you got St. Pauli, Nuremberg, and Hamburg, all teams above you in the table. You win all 3 of those games somehow, you are on top of the table, I would imagine. You lose all 3. Bye-bye. And you lose probably 2 of the 3, he's gone. This is hard.
There's absolutely a world in which we're outside the top 10 by Christmas, depending on how these games go. And there's a version of it where we're
top of the table,
top 3. So we'll see. We'll have to see if like you said, if there was any injuries to Drexler, if we could stay healthy. The other big thing I thought was Salif Sané with another setback on his end. So he just as when he had started to make a comeback, I think he had a cameo right before the international break, like second half of that game. He's down for the count again. So I mean, he'd be a useful guy to have back in.
The good news about that, I guess, is that Kaminsky's was really strong in this game. I thought he was very good in the game, and obviously having Tiao, Itakura, and Kaminsky playing as well as they have this season for the most part, it makes it. I mean, even if Sané was healthy, it'd be difficult to put him in there because the three of them have been playing really well. Who do you bring out? Probably Kaminsky, but Kaminsky's had some crucial assists this year. He's been fairly consistent, and in this game in particular, he was driving the ball up the pitch a lot, quite often. You know, in this game you saw Tiao and Itakura stay back a little bit more. So, yeah, and he's had really good chemistry as well with Oyan. They've had they've been telepathic almost at times. So it's a difficult call for Grammozis, and I guess you could always, if you really wanted Sani out there, you could probably bench Paulsen and Latza and put him as a holding midfielder because he played that position at Hanover. So. Yeah, all these little options. I don't know. We'll see what Grammozis wants to do here, but the seat is going to be hot for him, and he needs to get some results here in the next 4 games. In particular, the next game. Derek says overall horrible performance most of the game, at least for the team. It wasn't a great performance at all by the team. Neither team really. Passing percentage was poor for both teams. Towards the end of the game, Bremen started getting better at it, but I mean, both teams were around 60% most of the game. It's pretty poor, I think. And it was cold. It was rainy.
It seemed like a game that was fought in the central third a lot, with neither team able to string too many passes together.
A lot of it's hitting the ball back and forth to each other, really, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't that great, so.
Last piece I think that we have to mention it, and I hate that we have to mention this, is that going back to the decision, is that there were reports that once again I apologize for the pronunciation name, but Asale was racially abused on social media subsequent to that referee decision. I don't know if the investigation that has been concluded into identifying who those people were. Presumably they're Schalke affiliated in some capacity, if not directly. Schalke supporters, and obviously just completely unnecessary and no place for it. And it's frustrating because it's not the first time over the past couple seasons that we've had an issue with our fan base doing this. And I remember there was the derby, I think away at Dortmund, where there was some ultras that were getting a little bit over the top with some of the things that were going on there. And there's been a couple other incidents as well. And then you pair that, with the whole Clemens Tony's thing, going back to that, it's unfortunate because obviously, the few individuals who are responsible for these things are not representative of, the club or the fan base as a whole. But
correct.
If these things continue to happen, then it becomes a trend, and then it starts to become attached to sort of the current understanding of your club and your supporters and your culture. And that's it's a pretty terrible stain that you'd like to avoid if possible. And hopefully we can expel this from the fan base, because I'm pretty tired of talking about it and having these kind of things happen. I mean, you can be upset about a decision. You can be upset that a guy potentially died. That's how you view it. I certainly do. But you don't need to take it to that level. It's not okay.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it was a couple idiots making remarks, and they should be banned. That's what I think. And hopefully, those in the Nord Curve, stand up and make them call them out of it. Get them out of there. It's putting a damn poor name on the team and in the game in general. It shouldn't be any fan base really. But don't blame the player for something like this. It's really the referee, and I don't know. Don't blame the player. Don't say shit to people. So, yeah, it was unfortunate.
I don't care if you yell at the player. Just don't go about it in that way. I mean, yeah,
correct. That's what I mean. That's what
exactly. It's like, you can yell at the player all you want.
Be nice to everybody.
But make it actually like sporting based. You don't have to take it to that level. It's gross. So anyway, there's that.
There's that.
And on that note,
And on that note. Yeah, it's a short week. Well, at least for us in the States, right? Thanksgiving for us. So short week, short podcast, I guess. I mean, it's not much to dwell about. Really, the main talk point for us was the penalty, which we talked about at length. And then now looking at the next 4 games, in particular, the next game against Sandhausen, it's a must win. It has to be for Grammozis. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's going to be on Saturday. We'll definitely do a live stream. So definitely, check it out. Check out the watch along on Saturday morning. And then we'll be back for the podcast after the holidays, for at least the holidays here in the US. So
quick question to you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Not that I want to speak this into existence, but let's say we go out and we lose comprehensively to Sandhausen.
Oh.
2-0, 3-1, poor performance from the team. Is Grammozis gone immediately? I'm not entirely sure there's been enough momentum in that direction for that kind of a result to do it. But I mean, considering like how important of a fixture that is, and where Sandhausen is from a performance standpoint so far, do you think that could be enough? I think there's a non-zero chance. I don't know if you do that right before the hard fixtures that we have coming up, but
yeah,
it's
no.
tough.
If we have a poor result against Sandhausen and then get blown out of the water by St. Pauli, I can see it, because then you'd have 2 games before the international break. It would give the new coach, whomever that is, at least 2 games plus the winter pause to kind of sort things out, which is still hard because you'd imagine they'd wait till after the break. But I mean, you get 2 poor results in the next 2 games. I can see that happening, but definitely not against Sandhausen. I mean, I don't even know who the options are right now of who's available and what kind of money we have to spend on these people. It might more than likely be, maybe it'll be Gerald Samoa or Buskins. Who knows? We really don't know who's available or what the options are. So, yeah, for me, to answer your question, no about Sandhausen, but possibly after the St. Pauli match, especially Bergstaller scores. No, I was kidding.
Well, at least Haji Wright isn't at Sandhausen any longer to be one of those players that comes back against us and scores on us, because that would happen. So
it would, yeah. And it's coming with Bergstaller. I know.
I'm not gonna be mad about it. My body is ready.
No.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the Bergstaller misery.
Oh my goodness! All right. I guess so that'll put a bow on this one, on this short holiday weekend episode here. Yeah. Anything you want to plug, or where can our followers find you on social media?
Find me at JMMangan, JMMangan on Twitter, and yeah, just to all of our followers in the States or any place that's celebrating Thanksgiving or an equivalent holiday, enjoy your time with friends and family and loved ones, and be safe with your travel, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah. Now we know Canada already had their Thanksgiving, but everybody else in the US, happy Thanksgiving to you as well, and to everybody. Just during this holiday time, hold your loved ones dear, and enjoy the time with your family and friends. And so, yeah, you can follow me at R_KHARMAN on Twitter. Definitely give the podcast a follow. Give it a like on YouTube. Hit that bell notification so you get notified when we have podcasts and the occasional content whenever it comes up. Yeah. Well, until the next episode comes, or the next game, watch along on Saturday. We'll catch you soon. Glück auf.